Hello there. Thank you for being here. At Heart of Calm, a quiet little space where we can sit together, slow down our breath, and gently listen to whatever is stirring inside. After I shared my story about releasing resentment, I started to notice a different kind of heaviness. Quieter, less obvious, but still very present in my everyday life. It wasn't anger. It wasn't heartbreak. It was the weight of small, ordinary things I had been carrying for years. Old habits. Outgrown roles I was still trying to play. Beliefs I never questioned, just accepted. I used to think all of it was simply a part of life. But over time, it felt more like a tight old coat, still wrapped around me, only because I forgot that I could take it off. And little by little, I began to set those things down. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just one quiet morning asking myself, do I still need this? And gently answering, it's okay to let it go. I used to have the most beautiful set of dishes. A teacup with gold trim, hand-embroidered napkins, fine china that only came out for holidays. Every time I cleaned the cabinet, I'd pause and admire them, then gently close the door again and whisper to myself, maybe later, maybe for a special day. Later, when we had guests. Later, when things felt more worth it. Later, when I felt like I had a reason to use something so lovely. But over time, I began to see it differently. Later doesn't always come. And if I kept waiting for a reason to live beautifully, I might spend my whole life waiting. One morning, as I was reaching for an old plastic mug, I stopped, opened the cabinet, and asked myself, why not use what I love now? So I washed everything carefully. I kept the ones that made me smile. And the rest, I gave away. If someone had asked me, did it hurt to let them go? Yes, a little. There was a small ache, like saying goodbye to something that had once mattered. But when I looked at that same corner of my kitchen, where a chipped cup used to sit, and saw a beautiful porcelain teacup shining quietly in its place, I smiled again. Because I realized everything in life is a quiet exchange, letting go of the old to make space for something new and better. That's exactly what I need right now. Once I began asking what truly felt right for me, I couldn't stop. The question kept echoing, what is the kindest choice I can make for myself right now? And then one morning, as I glanced toward the door, my eyes landed on my shoe cabinet. Packed to the brim, overflowing with pairs I hadn't touched in years. It felt like they were all asking me, do you still need us? I used to choose shoes for how they looked. Heels, pointed toes, delicate straps. They looked elegant when I stood still. But the moment I had to walk, my heels burned, my toes went numb. And still, I endured. Why? Because I thought being a woman meant getting used to discomfort. Because I believed that looking good required sacrifice. Because I had gotten used to putting my own comfort last. Some shoes I'd never even worn. Still in their boxes, untouched for years. Others had only been worn once, but I couldn't let them go. Because of the money, or the memory of a version of me who once felt beautiful in them. But then came the real questions. What if I wanted to treat myself more gently? What if I no longer cared what others thought of my shoes? What if I didn't want to see my feet covered in quiet injuries anymore? Why was I still doing this to myself? All those questions circled back to one. Which ones are truly kind to me? That day, I began to sort through every pair. Not to tidy up, but to listen. First came the shoes that felt good. The ones that supported me, cushioned me, let me move without pain. Those stayed. I brought them to the front of the cabinet as a quiet commitment to the woman I am now, someone who no longer tolerates harm, not even in small doses. Second came the shoes that were no longer practical, but still carried meaning. They were beautiful, tied to memories, moments, people, stages of life I once walked through. I didn't want to wear them again, but I didn't want to forget them either. So I gave them a special corner, not to use, but to honor. Third came the shoes I had forgotten. Damaged, dusty, unneeded. Some were peeling, broken beyond repair. This was their goodbye. Not because they weren't once beautiful, but because I had outgrown them. Some things are meant to stay behind, exactly where they belonged. Since that day, my steps have felt different. Not rushed, not strained, just steady. On shoes that love me back, and a path that finally feels like mine. Maybe age has affected me more than I realized. Just sorting through my shoes for a while left my body aching. But honestly, it felt wonderful. I had done something that truly pleased me. And then my eyes wandered to the walls. The framed prints, the decor on the shelves, the cushions that matched the curtains. Everything looked fine. Neat, pretty, just enough to be aesthetic. And yet, I felt oddly disconnected. The house was warm, but my heart wasn't. I remembered a time when I used to decorate for how it looked to others. I picked wall art based on trends. Bought lamps in minimalist style because my friends liked them. Even chose paint colors that would photograph well. Whenever guests came over, I polished every corner, straightened every item, as if I were trying to prove something. That I was tidy, that I had taste, that I was living right. But when everyone left, the house fell back into silence and emptiness. It looked good, but it didn't say anything about me. So I asked myself, does this space truly reflect the woman I'm becoming? And the honest answer was no. I decided to make changes, but slowly. Because if I had to force myself to change, then maybe I was still trying to become someone else, instead of gently returning to myself. And also, I needed to be kind to my body. Sudden changes might excite the heart, but overwhelm the spine. I've learned that now, so I started softly, just glancing at the corners that didn't feel quite right. Swapping trendy prints for old family photos, faded but warm. Putting away the fake flowers that no longer brought me joy. Replacing them with a few real leaves. Slow growing, simple, alive. I no longer decorated to impress. I decorated so I could breathe. I didn't follow seasonal palettes. I followed what felt peaceful inside. Some things I kept simply because they made me smile. A hand-stitched scarf my mother gave me, a birthday card from my daughter, a worn pillow that still gave the softest rest. The space around me slowly shifted. It wasn't polished anymore, but it had soul. It no longer tried to impress, it simply welcomed me. And that's all I needed to feel, that I truly belonged here, that this place was mine. There was a time when the kitchen was the busiest part of my day. It never rested. I cooked because someone was coming home, because the kids were hungry, because my husband worked late, because my parents visited on weekends, because friends dropped by unexpectedly, but never because I wanted to cook for me. And when no one needed me to cook anymore, the kitchen grew so quiet. It felt almost lonely to step into it. Lunch became instant noodles. Dinner, a dry sandwich, the same routine. No colors, no scents, no feeling. I lived like that for a while. Until one morning, while making a cup of tea, I paused and thought, when was the last time I cooked a real meal? Just for myself? Not something to fill my stomach. Not just something quick. But a meal that felt intentional because I mattered too. Right then, I made a decision. I wouldn't wait for someone else to need me. I would cook for myself, just like I used to cook for the whole world. I started small. Bought a new pan that didn't strain my wrist. Picked out some fresh ingredients. Wiped the counters with lemon oil to freshen the air. And took out the one bowl I loved most. I didn't cook much, just something simple. A pot of soup and a fried egg. But when I sat down at the table, I felt something tender. No one had asked me to do this, and I still did, because I wanted to care for myself. For the first time in years, I ate slowly, tasted every bite, and quietly said to myself, "Thank you for showing up for me today." After that, I stopped buying fast food. I returned to the dishes I used to love, and even tried the recipes I once dreamed of cooking, but never did. Now I cook not to impress, not to meet anyone's expectations, but to give back to the woman who had always served others. One day I made pumpkin soup with a swirl of cream, not for a holiday, just because I wanted to try. And with the first spoonful, I felt like a little girl being comforted again. On another day, I placed fresh flowers beside my plate. Just for one, just for me. And I smiled, because I didn't know something so small could make the day feel so full. My kitchen is quiet now, but there's a gentle simmer on the stove, aromas in the air, and a feeling of home that has softly returned. Cooking for myself isn't just a task. It's a soft reminder that I am worthy of care, even when no one is there to say it out loud. One afternoon, while reaching for a sticky note in my desk drawer, I accidentally stumbled upon a tiny forgotten world inside, messy, crowded, and filled with things I no longer truly needed. A pen that had run dry, a notebook with a torn spine, receipts from years ago, old reading glasses I didn't even remember putting there, and birthday cards faded with time from people who were no longer part of my life. I sat down, started pulling things out one by one, and suddenly felt overwhelmed. Not by the dust, not by the clutter, but by a simple, clear question that rose within me. Why have I kept all of this? Not because I needed it, but because I thought I should. Because what if one day I might need it again? Because I couldn't quite let go of a memory, even a fading one. Because throwing something away felt like dishonoring what it once meant. I realized many of the things I held on to weren't kept out of love. They were kept out of fear. Fear of losing something. Fear of regret. Fear of the emptiness that might come after letting go. But if something no longer belongs in my present, if it doesn't bring a soft smile when I touch it, if it only weighs me down when I accidentally see it, then maybe it's time to let it go. So I started sorting. Useful things I kept. Meaningful memories I wrapped gently and placed in a small box. And the rest, the things that no longer fit my journey, I quietly thanked and released. As the drawer slowly emptied, I didn't feel loss. I felt space. I felt breath. I felt something open up, light wide, like a room where a new story could finally begin. And I understood something simple. It wasn't just the drawer. It was my life that was ready to be cleared and made gentle again. One day I sat in the middle of a freshly cleaned room and felt tired. Not from the cleaning, but from all the roles I had been playing for years. The good daughter, the devoted wife, the understanding mother, the strong woman who never crumbles. I had performed those parts so well that even I sometimes forgot. To ask myself if I was okay, if there was a part of me quietly aching, or if I was carrying emotions I never gave myself permission to feel. Every time I cried, it was in the kitchen, quietly. Every time I was sad, I smiled so no one would worry. Every time I wanted to say, I'm exhausted, I changed it to, it's all right, I'm fine. But the truth is, I don't have to be fine all the time. No one asked me to be endlessly strong, and no one else will live my life for me if I keep abandoning myself. So I began to soften, to allow myself to do a little less, to say no to what didn't feel right, to stop trying to be right in everyone else's eyes. Because if I have to sacrifice my peace just to be accepted, maybe that acceptance is too expensive. Little by little, I stepped away from the roles that no longer felt like me. I stopped pretending to be calm when storms raged inside. I stopped forcing a smile when my heart wasn't in it. And I came back to my real self, with all her feelings, all her tenderness, and her quiet strength. And that could now say, today I choose to be honest with myself. You might think that living honestly with yourself would bring immediate joy. I used to believe that too. But when I finally let go of the roles I had carried for so long, when I began to soften and reach for peace, the first thing I felt was sorrow. Not just sadness, but an old, quiet disappointment that I hadn't had words for. I sat there still, with nothing left to hold on to. No more roles to hide behind. No need to pretend I was strong. Just a woman, tired from carrying everything alone, finally allowing herself to set it all down. Tears fell, as if I had lost something precious, as if I were saying goodbye to a version of myself who had held it together for far too long. And after crying for what felt like forever, with no one watching, with no need to explain, I felt lighter for the first time in years. From that day on, I started learning something new. How to sit with my feelings, not fix them, not label them, not force myself to be positive too soon. When I was sad, I allowed the sadness. When I was angry, I breathed with it. When I felt empty, I simply sat still and listened. I stopped trying to heal my feelings. Instead, I stayed beside them, like old friends I'd forgotten how to talk to. And strangely, that made me feel more peaceful than anything else. I realized healing doesn't come from pushing emotions away. It comes from daring to feel them fully. Not every sorrow needs an explanation. Not every tear means weakness. Sometimes just sitting beside yourself, without rushing, without pretending, is the greatest act of love. I no longer try to be fine all the time. I just want to be honest. And from that honesty, a small sense of peace finally returned. After slowing down, after allowing myself to feel, to be tired, to be vulnerable, I began to realize something I had never dared to believe. There was never anything wrong with me. I didn't need to fix myself to be good enough. I just needed to live honestly, as I truly am. For so long, I thought I had to change to be more acceptable. I tried to be softer, more agreeable, more positive, because I was afraid that if I wasn't, I would be seen as too much, too sensitive, too difficult. But now, after sitting with all the emotions I once rejected, I understand there's nothing wrong with being hurt. There's nothing wrong with needing comfort. There's nothing wrong with needing stillness, just to breathe. I don't need to race anyone. I don't have to become a better version every day. Some days, all I need is to simply be myself, and that is enough. I've started loving myself again, in the smallest of ways. Choosing food I enjoy without explanation. Wearing soft clothes that help me feel calm. Turning off my phone early just to sit quietly with myself. I no longer pressure myself to be inspiring or to be positive all the time, because the truth is, being fully myself is already the greatest gift I can give. Looking back, nothing too dramatic happened. I just let go of a few items in my closet, rearranged my space, cooked a simple meal just for me, cried quietly, and sat with my feelings without fear. Each of those things seemed small, but to me, they were a quiet revolution. Every time I let go of something that no longer fit, I was choosing to trust myself. Every time I whispered, "I don't need this anymore," I was making room for what feels lighter, truer, and more me. Letting go no longer feels like loss. It feels like a quiet promise to myself. From now on, I will live for the peace within, not for appearances, not for expectations. With each day, I feel just a little lighter. With each choice, I step a little closer to who I truly am. And in this quiet return to myself, I'm not rushing. I'm not forcing anything, just moving slowly, but truthfully. If you're still here, quietly listening, maybe a part of you feels tired too, wishing to let go, wishing to feel a little lighter, wishing to live as yourself without having to carry so much. I just want to say this from someone who once held on to too many things that no longer fit. You don't have to rush. You don't have to be perfect to deserve peace. Just start with one small thing, something that no longer feels right for you. It could be letting go of one item, replacing a picture frame, cooking a meal just for yourself, looking into your own eyes in the mirror, and asking, what am I still holding on to, even though my heart is ready to let it go? And day by day, as you gently release what no longer serves you, you'll begin to realize you no longer need to become someone else. Because in the end, peace isn't something you have to chase. It's something that quietly returns when you are light enough to welcome it home.